Hello and welcome. I'm Reed Riggs, and I'm going to carefully ramble about teaching a language in schools according to my experience and my thoughts from a variety of other sources, including research and reading other teachers' ideas and professional organization groups like ACTFL and other places as I drive home from work. So it's fresh on my mind. So this topic is going to be about a task-based curriculum and why and how I try to be responsive to my students in ways that can go along with a task-based curriculum according to task-based language teaching researchers, and ways that I would choose to diverge because of considerations for my context, which is teaching Chinese in the United States. I'm here in Hawaii. And Chinese is not an immediately useful language right outside of our classroom doors. Now you might be asking, oh, which language is then? And I would say English in the United States. English as a second language is a class in pretty much any school or program where students can expect to leave the classroom and immediately need it outside their classroom doors. There can also be work contexts in which, for example, there's a company from maybe China, maybe Spain, maybe France, and the students in the Chinese language classroom are preparing to work in a company where they will need to understand, write, have conversations, view materials and people that are using that language, and so they use the classroom to prepare for that context. So in very formal task-based language teaching, which we're getting training from a great expert in our Star Talk program right now, and it's wonderful. I always like professional learning and professional growth. I see it as a lifelong, continuous need. It makes a difference. When I meet teachers who get training constantly, they've been doing it for decades, it really shows. And usually they'll be the first ones to tell you that there's no end to training. There's always more to go and hear again, or get another perspective on, or get a refresher, or to do again after your own experience to make new connections. And so we're learning about how researchers have historically viewed task-based language teaching in their research. And one of the first necessities is a needs analysis, where you survey, you interview students, teachers, families, everybody relevant to your program who has some stake in it. The students learning the language will need to use the language for some sorts of needs, maybe in work, maybe in living, maybe in travel. You go and find that out. Once you finish the needs analysis, you create a list of tasks that you found out through the needs analysis that students will need to be able to do. Now this makes sense when you have a work context where daily, or at least weekly, after the students leave your class, they can go and do the tasks you've been training them to do in that work environment. If it's an English as a second language classroom in the United States or in England or in a lot of countries, because English is currently the international language, then you can do a needs analysis where you find out that they need to use the target language in a lot of daily life situations, taking the bus, shopping, going to the bank. You'll find out through the needs analysis what those are. And then from that, you make a task-based syllabus, which is a list of summative tasks that inform all of your classroom instruction, where you're doing all kinds of different classroom activities, but that end in students having the knowledge and skills to do the tasks, and those tasks resemble needs that are immediate and outside the classroom. Okay, how is my classroom different? My classroom is a Chinese language classroom in the United States. Are there Chinese speakers in the US? Yes, there are many, which is why I don't like calling it a foreign language class. There are lots of Chinese speakers in the United States. Can my students go to Chinatown to use Chinese with people? Yes, they can. Can my students find Chinese bubble tea shops around? Yes, they can. Can my students go online to use the language? Yes, they can. But do my students immediately confront the language when they leave the classroom doors? They do not. Do my students on a daily or weekly basis naturally run into situations where they need to use Chinese? No, they do not. Are my high school students, grades 9 through 12, thinking about work right now? I can tell you that they are not, and also a lot of college students are not. And I know this from teaching college and talking about work as parts of the curriculum, where students will say, I don't really think about this. My high school students now, where we have summative tasks where they have to think of an organization or company they'd like to work for, they're telling me, I've never thought about this. And we have Star Talk students who are in a career readiness themed program who, during their entry interviews, mostly all said, I haven't really thought about work, I'm still in college. So what does this say for our middle school world language students? I'll call it world language now instead of foreign language. But the context is still what I'm talking about, that it's not the dominant language outside the classroom. So the tasks we prepare in the classroom are not something the students will immediately go and continue doing. We can expect that they won't. So what should we organize our language around? Well, we can organize our language around ourselves as our own community. A classroom has regular routines, much like a bank has regular routines and a restaurant has regular routines that accomplish the business of that institutional environment. So when my students come into the classroom, we have to take attendance every day. We have to find out what's due. We have to find out what graded assignments are coming up. We have to find out who's gone and when they're coming back. We have to find out who needs to go to the office or coming back from the office. A school is not the wild. We're not out in the environment chatting with friends. We prevent chatting with friends because it's off task and not accomplishing our classroom goals. So the classroom is itself, we can view the classroom as a workplace. Much like if I want to go, I got good at Spanish by working at a Taco Bell for a summer after high school, where suddenly I realized I could use the language to talk with people. The classroom should be treated, we should treat the classroom as that institutional space, that institutional environment, context, and do all of our routines using the language. That doesn't mean it's a full-on immersion, act as if we're in China kind of thing. It can start out real simple, and it's okay to scaffold. However, I can write a translation on the board the first 5 times. But as we continue doing it, we have more than 5 days of class. We have, 100 days of class. I have to count it. We have, about 4 months worth of classes per semester. And the students who go on to study for 3 or 4 years, which mine do, that's 2 times 4 is 8. We have 8 semesters. It's a lot of repeated usage, which you would do in any work environment. So for a task-based curriculum, to start with a needs analysis, I can imagine that a needs analysis for us would really focus on the needs of the classroom, and that we should recognize our classroom. Now, we get into a weird loop where we would say, the task needs to resemble what would happen in the real world. And we just need to define our classroom as the real world. So students might say, oh, but what are we preparing to do? So we're preparing to do what we have to do in school. We're required to do these things. Grading, assessment, attendance. As the activities proceed, you start to notice that there are actually a lot of variety of different things we do. Playing multimedia clips, playing audio, playing video. I asked the students using Chinese, do you want to hear it again? Do you want to see it again? Who needs to borrow a pencil? Can you please pass the paper around? There's a lot of little things we do in our classroom that are the specific business of the classroom. So I think it's important that we recognize that we can't get much from a needs analysis outside of our classroom in a place where the language isn't used outside of our classroom, and that the students are too young to actually go on to a work setting in anytime soon, not within the next couple of years for high school students. Maybe some seniors will not go to college, and then they'll go on to do that. So that's what I propose, how we adapt. Now, secondarily, I would add that play during instructional activities doesn't need to violate a task-based curriculum. where when we say the summative tasks will resemble what students need to really use the language for, that's fine. The summative tasks are coming up every week or two, and we spend all of our classroom activity time and classroom tasks, the pedagogic tasks, preparing for those summative tasks. That's the time when we can build stories together, we can get playful, we can build imaginative scenes together, we can survey each other about what really happened, we can survey each other about imaginative, playful, silly kinds of things. Ideally that's driven by the students and not the teacher making everything silly arbitrarily. So those are my thoughts about a task-based curriculum. Okay, I'm Reed Riggs. I'm almost home. Thanks for listening.